You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, not what you don't.
Good morning.
And good morning to you. Tony Caravan here for another morning show edition. Keep knocking into this thing. I'm going to try to, I'll be slightly off camera here. I'm trying to do some adjustments here in the morning, if you don't mind. My picture setting is just a little bit off. So, see if I can fix this for you. That doesn't seem to be doing the darn thing. How are you all today? It's kind of funny how this image is so off. I mean, literally so off of what it should really look like. There we go. Maybe try that. And reduce the sharpness, perhaps. Add some color or subtract color. I don't know. Does it look like it's getting better or worse? Can't really tell. And last but not least, tint. Take some tint out of it. And I don't think that's it. Oh, well, we're going somewhere else now. Okay. I'm not going to restart this show. I just wasted 2 minutes and 38 seconds. So we'll start that all over again in...
Good morning.
I'm here, another day, another dollar, but minus the dollar. It's the morning show. I'm drinking some Starbucks medium roast cold brew with a little bit of Godiva chocolate I put into it. I'm not sure if the Godiva chocolate is meant for pudding. It's something I've had in my cupboard for a fairly long time right now. So it's we'll just have to deal with it. I'm running a little bit slow and running a little bit empty today. Rained all day yesterday, and it was just one of those days where you felt like not doing anything. And I don't know. But it looks like for those interested in the
Weekend weather,
it's going to be 46 degrees in the mid-Atlantic, former United States. Low tonight's going to go down to 25. So much for doing anything out in the garden. Saturday, 55 and 30 at night. That's not bad. Saturday may be the day. I may lay down some dirt in my raised beds today. And then tomorrow start messing around. Sunday, it's supposed to be 59 and it's looking and then 34 at night. So that's above freezing. And then by Monday and Tuesday, we're back up in the 60s and it seems we'll be above freezing. That's not to say that we're not going to get another frost and multiple frost and some snow between now and May. But there's your
weekend weather.
And
Here's what's happening?
It's another day. St. Patrick's Day is come and gone. We went through that yesterday. I I'm trying to come up with a transition to take this show on the road, so to speak, outside into the real world, outside of this makeshift studio. And I also want to fix this studio somewhat. But there's a lot of things to talk about right now. And um, kind of like I mentioned, I don't know how many people really read the descriptions of these videos, but a common theme I talk about is the corporatocracy and things of that. And the idea is to awaken those willing to listen about the dehumanization and enslavement of man. And despite everything, I have a song out there. It's called "Breakaway Civilization." It's not the greatest song. It's beat poetry, so to call them songs. Some of my stuff actually is very, very melodic and airplay ready, but just to use the title "Breakaway Civilization" and some of the lyrics that are inside it, it's the idea that there's more than I was going to say. There's a breakaway civilization, and then there's our civilization, but or the one that we perceive or that's put before our eyes. But it's not that really. There seems to be multiple civilizations. And what are the number of them, the question is, how many of them are there? I mean, obviously someone living in a remote area in the Amazon jungle, there's still rumored to be, whether or not this is fact or not, but there's still rumored to be certain tribes in South America, particularly, deep in the rainforest, that have avoided all contact with so-called modern man. And every time they even, there's an encroachment on their space, they just move deeper and deeper uh, into the back. And so so the idea with that is that that would be, you know, not so much to call them a civilization, but to call them you know, a people living, living simultaneously to, on the same planet, but with an entirely different, different way of life. And the same can be said for parts of Africa. And while Africa over the past, 100 years or so has gone, has been fairly modernized in many of the city areas, it's there are still places that are living quite the same way as they lived many years ago. So one of and the same goes within. You could go into like certain areas in Southeast Asia, and even some of the Inuit people in some of the northern ice, ice climate regions that do trade with people who are, you know, so-called civilized or what have you. But those people are, they're still living a continuous life the same way they lived, you know, for time immemorial. And that's the thing. And you have to wonder, about that, or just ponder it, and think about it. And those that have gotten close to, at least the ones that allow people to, to make eye contact with them, maybe to come into close proximity of them, seem to find that these people are pretty happy and living, they're not concerned about this technology. I talk on Monday about the road rally, like everybody in a hurry to get, as if they're running late. Well, this is Friday, the 19th of March, and there seems to be a road rally out there. I don't know if the microphone's picking it up or not. But yeah, I'm trying this medium roast Starbucks brew with a little bit of, like I say, with some Godiva chocolate thrown in there, which I think is a pudding mix, but what does it really matter? I'm not a Starbucks person. I don't go to Starbucks. I don't support things like that. To me, in fact, there was something yesterday I was talking about, and then after I watched the show, I always watch these shows after, just to make sure everything, it didn't freeze up or whatever. And I had one thing I missed in yesterday's show was that I forgot to say, how has anyone ever really taken Starbucks? They used to do these Pepsi challenge. I don't know if people recall that. It's like Pepsi and Coke, and they would bring people into some kind of shopping mall or something. And it would be like, it was just in a regular cup, and people would, which one do you like better? And obviously if it was the Pepsi challenge, it seems Pepsi would come out on top. But it was supposed to be a blind taste test. You can't trust anything you see on TV, especially commercials. But what I'm saying is, it'd be interesting to do is to see someone. When I was looking I wanted to get away from these carbonated. I wanted caffeine in the morning because these shows for me are early. For folks over across the pond, it's like 5 hours later. But I mean, I start these shows 5 in the morning. And, and I'm up at 4, well, just actually after 4. So today I don't think I rolled out of bed till 4:30. So I'm literally only been up for, a fairly short period of time. So caffeine is kind of semi must. But has anyone really ever, if they put Starbucks, when I was looking around at these things, because again, I kind of, in fact, even the caffeine cola habit, I kicked that a while back. I stopped doing that. And it's like, but too much carbonation though, in the first thing in the morning. Your stomach's not ready to be, chugging, a couple of and so I thought, okay, I'm just going to I'll do the coffee thing, but I didn't want to necessarily I'm not set up here. I didn't want to have to keep running into the kitchen, to get a warmer, to keep refilling my thing. So I figured I'd go with the cold coffee route. Well, anyway, so I'm looking on the, in the cooler section where they have this. And, just to answer back, I get up by 5. I never make it. I never make it to 6. I'm always up definitely like 4 or 5 in the morning. And anyway, I'm just answering someone in the chat. But the idea is that you've got Starbucks. Yeah, they have a one over here, Dunkin' Donuts, it's called. It's a donut shop stuff for people who are not in the US. And, and various other versions of generic brands of whatever. And I'd love someone to do like one of those Pepsi challenges, because I always contended, this is a thing. I used to get something called, I always kept coffee in the house. And at one point I used to drink coffee. I used to smoke cigarettes and drink coffee every morning. But I got out of the cigarette thing. I quit cigarettes a while back. But that used to be my morning ritual. Get up, smoke some cigarettes, and drink a couple cups of coffee. But I would drink instant coffee. I mean, so I'm not promoting the brand, but I used to get like Folgers, Crystals, or something weird like that. Just mix some hot water in it. And sometimes I would put a little bit of like hot cocoa mix. I could get a pack of these hot cocoa things. I wouldn't put the whole thing in. I just sprinkle a little bit in just to give it that little boost. I wasn't putting cream or sugar or anything in it. And I'd have people visit sometimes who were coffee drinkers, coffee, connoisseurs, people who get into this, don't mind going to Starbucks and buying coffee for $4 or $6, whatever the heck they pay for it. And I'd give them one of my mixes. In fact, there's another secret. If you could put a little bit of there's a spice that they actually, one of the secrets in, I think, Coca-Cola, it might be, is what the heck is that? Oh, there's a certain spice that if you sprinkle a little bit of it in, I can't, it's just too early in the morning. It'll come to me and I'll tell you. But anyway, I should make this mixed coffee. They didn't see what I was doing. And I'd bring them out a cup, and it was instant. It was basically instant coffee out of it that I just had in the refrigerator. And that stuff keeps for like a month or so. You put a spoonful or so in a cup of hot water, stir it up. It even kind of froths up at the top. And I'd say, "What do you think of that coffee?" And they'd like it. And I'd always think, like, that spoonful of instant coffee that I just gave you cost me about 5 cents, if that. And it's hot water, maybe a dime if I put some cocoa in it or something. And you're going to Starbucks and buying something like a mocha, coffee, and you're spending like $6 for it. And you can't tell the difference. But what does that have to do with the breakaway civilization? Well, when you take it to Western civilization, which is like now fallen, we have a whole series of civilizations in our world. So forget about people in the rainforest or the deep parts of Africa or Southeast Asia or the extreme northern latitudes where they're living, in ice country. Uh, look at city life, right? And so you have, if you just strip a city like New York City down and say you go to the Upper East Side, Central Park, these people who have these apartments, they call them apartments, more so than even condos, but to me it's a condo because they actually you buy these apartments even though it's a building, you're buying that unit. I think like Chelsea Clinton bought one for a couple $1,000,000 or something like that. So these, you know, extremely wealthy, the so-called ruling elite, they're living in these one, two, maybe more, a multi-million dollar apartment, overlooking Central Park, say. It's the same with, well, I lived in Malibu, uh, in California, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, a while back, and it's the same thing there, except I didn't own that house. I was leasing it. So, but that house itself would have been, several $1,000,000. Now, who knows? It could have been the way things changed over there. My chair keeps falling down. It'll probably be like $14 million. Of course, right after I left Malibu, they had these mudslides, and a lot of those multi-million-dollar houses would just wash down the cliff. Right in front of the place I was leasing, there was this piece of land that wasn't developed. It wasn't a big space, but it was big enough to put like a, just a small house or something on it. And it was cheap, um, like really cheap. And I tried to buy it, but they said, yeah, you can buy it, but you can't build on it because it wasn't, they didn't said it wasn't stable enough. I mean, and they're right. I mean, I guess if you put pylons, into the ground conceivably, but then the cost of trying to make that land get approved so that it wouldn't wash down the bank wouldn't be worth it. But anyway, so you have these people living in these, say, multi-million-dollar to double-digit million-dollar homes, from anywhere from 2 million, say, to 20 some plus million. With private jets, the Davos set, the people that do that sort of thing. The people pushing the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum and all that garbage. And so that's a breakaway civilization. They have no concept of like the average working person, what that person does, in their daily life. And, and it's no different. And then you could go down in various degrees. So, sometimes, so the term breakaway civilization really what it really applies to them. Because everybody else, even if you're just some, if you're an upper middle class person, even, some professional that's making a pretty good living, 6 figures or something like that, or maybe $1 million. But depending on where you live, it doesn't go a long way, because if you're paying, people in New York, I've known people, actually relative of mine married, believe she, a niece of mine who, was living with some guy up there. I don't know if they ever got, to tell you the truth, I've lost touch with, with some of my relatives, some of these nieces. I don't know if they ever eloped or not. At least they never informed me. I don't see them often because I live far. I live far away from people I know. I keep in touch as best I can with my direct relatives, but the way things are right now, and especially with this lockdown over the past, year now, getting over a year, it's like I have no idea what happened. So they may well have gotten married or something. But at least the last time I had communications with them, they were living in New York City, and they were paying I think it was something at least $5,000 a month rental. And they had decent jobs, but $5,000 a month. So you're talking $60,000 a year just for your rent. That's just your rent. So, there are some people that would consider a $60,000 a year job to be a good job, right? So, but then on top of that, they obviously have their electric bills, all their utilities, internet costs, transportation, dealing with things, obviously buying their food and clothing. If you're working, two people working, that's another factor. A lot of people don't realize that game. I played that game because I lived and worked in New York and DC and Philly, and in a lot of those places, you're just required. It's not like you wear the same clothes every day to work, especially a woman, so, talking about a niece of mine, so, the amount of money they have to spend on wardrobe is, is what some people spend on rent. So if you make $100,000 and you have a $5,000 a month rent, your apartment cost could cost upwards of $8,000. dollars a month. So I mean, you're almost, that's what they call someone who would be house poor. So it's kind of, and if you have cars, nice cars, you've got high insurance rates, and if you live in the city, it's not parking is a premium, so you're paying a premium price for parking. And so yeah, I mean the cost, it's just outrageous. Now when I was there, I was there in the 90s, late I was there right before New York got out of control. And so I did, I was fine. But I've watched it over the past 20, 25 years just get crazy. So what's the whole purpose of this babble? Breakaway civilization. Well, there's just, we're talking about tiers of people. So you've got people living at uh, the extreme breakaway civilization tier that really are completely out of touch with practically everyone below. Okay. They just they can't comprehend our daily lives. No matter, like I say, no matter how much you make, whether you're just some working stiff, just struggling to get by and pay the bills, or if you have what's considered a decent job, even even a professional job, some low-level lawyer working in a law office or something like that, or a doctor intern just starting out in a hospital, doctor. You still, you don't have, that still doesn't come close to what I'm talking about, this breakaway civilization, the Davos set. I mean, we used to talk about millionaires, and they used to have the Fortune 500, right? Well, now it's billionaires. The idea that, so many, I don't know, last year, uh, Amazon's president, didn't he just resign? Bezos, wasn't he worth something like $60 billion? In fact, amidst this whole lockdown, craziness that's gone on, Amazon, places like Walmart, maybe Target, I don't know for sure about that, but a lot of these places that were all dealing with people where everybody was buying online, that, they had record years. And like I said yesterday, the car companies, did, had like banner car sales years. It's because people have this, they're giving people this free money. So even though you're unemployed, they're giving people enough money to compensate for the discounted unemployment, so that it would shoot them up to about what their normal salary was, close to it, but in some cases over it. And so where did that money go to? People sitting around and they're just buying, 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 because they're sitting watching the boob tube. And what is it? It's just commercial after commercial. You need this, you need that. And then you watch a movie or a sitcom or whatever, and the characters in these things are always living in these luxurious apartments or houses. And so people feel like that's normal. I need that. And then that applies pressure on people. So people who get in relationships, it's like, a man or a woman doesn't want to be with a partner that, isn't living, can't provide, or that doesn't want to live that lifestyle. And so, it's just so much pressure on the average person that they succumb to it, and they they become house poor. They get in credit card debt, loan debt. They call it underwater. They have these big mortgages, and it's just, and it's pathetic. And remember, the corporatocracy, as I call it, the people who are in charge of the world right now, the elected politicians are all the talk of the TV stations, the networks, and the newspapers. But that's just content, like I said, that fills the space in between the car ads, selling you cars and pharmaceuticals and whatever other unnecessary thing you need. An over an overpriced appliance, a washer that costs $1,500 when you could probably buy one for 3 or 4. It's all I paid for my washer and dryer, like $300 each. I just got the standard white washer. You lift up the top, put your clothes in, close it. Knock on wood, that thing's been working for me for about 5 or 6 years now. But yeah, same thing with refrigerators, Yeah, I'd like to have, be able to just go get the filtered water from the front of my refrigerator and some ice cubes and all that crazy stuff, and have this. They now have ones that have like cameras somehow, so you can see through. Excuse me. You can see through what's inside yours, and you could take it a step further. These Silicon Valley gang, they've got smart appliances now, so they'll keep track of your inventory, of what you need, and talk to you and say, you're low on butter and milk or something like that, or give you a shopping list generated, and maybe communicate it to your have an app on your smartphone so you're at the grocery store and your refrigerator is telling you what you need. Okay, that's breakaway civilization. And people who have regular jobs, who feel they have a need to like live that life, it's sad in one regard. But I don't really, I don't really care so much about, trying to like speak to them in that regard, because if somebody's foolish enough, I'm not the only guy out here. Just pouring some more of this coffee in here. I'm not the only one out here by far, talking about this kind of stuff. But people want to hear what they want to hear, and they want to believe what they want to believe, and they won't accept that. And so, but we're getting at a time right now that you really need to think about your cost of living, what you can afford, what you can't afford, and going forward, how you're going to survive. I mean, this is this is a recurring theme as well. So, despite everything you hear, we're entering into this grand solar minimum, and this thing's supposedly set to peak in 2024, just in a couple of years. And as we've been seeing, despite the way it's reported on the news media, and for the life of me, I don't even understand, like I've said this before, what's their game? Like why are they pushing this? What's the truth behind the World Economic Forum? Why are they pushing the Paris Climate Accord and keep talking about climate change / global warming and CO2? Like, what are they, it's not like these people haven't gone to college. In fact, they've gone to some of the finest colleges and had some of the finest professors in the world, right? These are Harvard, Oxford, these are graduates from the best universities around the world, who have some of the best, the best educators in the world. Who have tenure and really aren't restricted, don't have to play some kind of political game. So they could tell people like it is. But they keep pushing this thing. But each year, in fact, I was, the people who like me, who look at this stuff, because there are certain things I will study and chart. And you can look back over the last 30 years and you can see that, that we've been cooling. This planet has been cooling consistently. And in the past, even in the past decade, it's been cooling. And what they do is they like to point out, they'll say, oh, it was, it's the moment there's a hot day somewhere. But like down in Australia, they didn't have this was not an extremely hot summer this year in Australia. And I mean, but they won't report that. See? They'll just try to find some spot somewhere where somebody's roasting, and they'll say, "Ah, see, it's like the weather, the weather where I am. It's been it's a cold winter. It was a cold winter. We had a few days there where the sun came out. Last week, I think it was last week. There was a day it got up into the 60s and it was sunny, and like towards the back part of my yard where I have my raised bed garden stuff, that spot, it gets hot back there. And so I was there. After I was fiddling around in the garden area, just getting ready for some things, just to get out of the house. And I ended up pulling out the old lounge chair afterwards, and and sat down and it was in the sun, and it felt good. But it's so of course, yeah, it's all about control. And so, but I mean, it's puzzling. I'm saying in a sense that how they keep pushing something. It's like the classic liar. When someone lies, there might be a motivation for someone not wanting to tell the truth sometimes. Just to say, keep somebody, I don't know. In some, so it's better somebody doesn't know this, that, the other, or whatever. I mean, honesty is should be your policy, but you know what I mean. There's the little lies versus the big lies. But the point is, no matter what kind of lie it is, ultimately the truth comes out because either somebody accidentally spills the beans, you personally slip up, or the truth makes its way out because over time, it's just you can't live a lie forever, and more and more facts are coming out that the earth is cooling. And so what happens when we start having crop shortages? And these people have been preaching this whole idea that CO2, is a bad thing. And like I've talked before, to the point of nauseum, you cannot run, our society cannot run without CO2, without carbon-based fuels. I mean, how do we heat, right? How do we run our heavy equipment? And heavy equipment is everywhere. And heavy equipment includes emergency vehicles, repair and maintenance vehicles. Forget about, because some of these people say, well, we'll just end all flights and we'll, end only electric cars, and we'll stop, building new buildings, and we'll outfit all the old buildings to such and such. But take where most of the population, big population centers are, and say they want to take these places like London, New York, even Dublin, but Berlin, Chicago, LA, Beijing, even it doesn't matter, Sydney. You take any city where you have large buildings, all right, city centers where you have concentrations of people. And you say, oh, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to outfit these city centers, these population centers, so they're green, as they call them, but as we know, it's the CO2 that greens the planet. Well, the only way you could even outfit, retrofit, whatever you want to call it, a building, all right, is using heavy equipment, cranes, you know, various machinery that requires, an enormous amount of energy in order to like raise things and, dig, you know, and that fossil fuels are the only things, carbon based fossil fuels are the only thing we have to do that. It's the same with electric cars. Like there was a study recently, and somebody caught somebody from an energy company on camera totally like screwing up. I wish I could show the video. And what it was sorry, mustache is itchy. They were talking about how they were going to have more of these electrical terminals for charge stations, and it was some electric company. And fortunately, there was some reporter in the back of the crowd said, "Well, where's the energy coming from to feed these electric car charging stations?" And it turned out in that particular area, and they went to the power. They said, "Well, from such and such energy company." So they followed up with the energy company to find out where they were getting their energy. And most of their energy for these so-called green, uh, electric car charging stations, that particular energy company was producing its energy mostly from like coal, basically from fossil fuels. So, it's all a head game. Like they're just playing a head game. Oh, I'm driving an electric car, and there's some person, sorry about that. And there's some person, driving along thinking, look how green and how good I am for the environment, and going like, you idiot. You'd be better off for the environment by putting gasoline in your car. You'd have less of an impact. Not that not that our cars today have that much of an impact. We have things called everything from catalytic converters to all kinds of gas filters, air filters. The things we put on our cars. That's why our cars are mostly made of like plastics and polymers instead of like in the old days. The cars were these heavy metal, things. You see a car accident today, and it's like, that thing is like instantly destroyed. I could remember, hitting. My father gave me I talked about this before. My father was a Chrysler guy, and he gave me when he was done with his cars, he gave me two of them. He'd buy a new car every, I don't know how many years, but every so many years when I was a kid, it just at the timing when I was like, had got my license happened to be the same year he was ready to buy a new Chrysler. And so he gave me his old Chrysler, and it was a boat, it was like a 4-door Chrysler, but that thing was all metal. I mean, that was like metal. And I could remember, hitting, a concrete, just pulling too close to some concrete thing or some pole or doing something. And it didn't even dent the bumper. That's how strong and sturdy those cars were. If that would have been one of these cars made today that cost like probably 5 times the price that he paid for that car he gave me, the whole front of it the plastic would all be cracked. It would be, yeah. But the idea is what I'm getting at is that's why they made them out of plastic too, not just to save money to increase their profit. Because plastics cost nothing. Plastics are a byproduct of fossil fuels. That's another thing nobody realizes. It's like are they going to close down refineries? Because you get rid of refineries, then you don't have the ability to create plastics. And just look around everywhere. Everything you have is plastic or some kind of polymer thing that comes out of that. I talked about that before. They accidentally discovered plastics because in the fields in the early days, they noticed there was this film, I guess from spillage, when they were, getting the oil out of the ground and then refining it into crude, into gasoline at the time. Before they've gone through so many processes they go through now to make it as clean as possible, so to speak. And they saw this stuff, and when they picked it up, it was like saran wrap, or whatever you want to call it, plastic wrap, and baggies, whatever, and that was, so they realized, oh, and that's plastic. So if you remember that movie, The Graduate, that classic line in there where the guy goes up to the Dustin Hoffman character and says, and whispers in his ear and says, plastics. And I don't know when that movie was made, but it was probably early 60s. I think that movie was probably from, I don't know. But yeah, plastics. And because plastics cost that basically were so cheap. That's why you can go to, the rise of China. That's why you can go to places, and find, the dollar trees and these dollar stores and say, how could they sell this thing that's like this big made of plastic for $1? How could they make profit on it? But, well, they discovered, plastics were, anywhere you have lots of oil deposits, anywhere you've got crude oil, which is basically tar. If you want to look at, like say, like I call it organic. When you see them make a road and it's like an asphalt road, or you buy tar to repair, they don't do it too much anymore. Now everybody wants to get metal roofs or, some kind of things. But you used to see a lot of tar, and you used to be able to get a can of even cold tar. This house I live in, when I bought this house, is like over 100 years old house. And I just bought it like 5-6 years ago. But, there were some things left in it. And one of the things left was like this 5-gallon drum there's a detached garage here from the old guy, from the people who, one of the previous owners. And in it was just tar. It was like a 5-gallon drum. It was about half filled with tar. And if you want to know what crude oil looks like, if you've never been to, out in LA, they have a place called La Brea Tar Pits. And you can see, where in there they've, and that's where they found a lot of preserved, like dinosaur bone type of things and stuff like that. But in its crude form, that's what crude oil is. It's like kind of like tar. And then they refine it, and then they get various things out of it. That's not to say that there aren't some chemicals in, like benzene or something like that, that's involved. That's a carcinogenic type of thing. But it's like when they used to have leaded gas and leaded paint and stuff like that. That was that was bad. But we got rid of leaded gas, and we got rid of all those things, leaded paint. But and that's when a lot of these protesters and like the Gretas of the world, What they don't seem to understand is they're working from some 1960s, fist in the air protest handbook. And instead, they don't really get, they don't really know that, yeah, at that time, there used to be smog in some of these, the only place there's really smog now is like places like Beijing and areas like that just ignore, haven't, take the cheap way out. But, most of the modern world has cleaned up its pretty much cleaned up its act. And so like I say, it's just puzzling to me, this whole thing. I could go on and on and on about that. How A, without carbon fuels, you can't run modern civilization at all. Forget about Western civilization, the concept of Western civilization. That's been destroyed by the old world order, the ruling elite, the Davos set. Forget about the US. There's no such thing. The United States is the disunited states. It's the former United States. It's just the states. You got a bunch of authoritarian governors, with their little fiefdoms. Some places are nice, some places aren't. Depends on where you live. Like I said before, you could live in paradise. There's some places that are really nice to live where people are just happy as, as could be. And there's other people that it's like they're living in a totalitarian police state. Depends on where you are. And, China is one of the biggest polluters out there. And so-called emerging nations, like even India, any place where you have over 1 billion people and that you're going to, and you have to basically feed them, keep them warm, house them, deal with transportation and all that stuff. I mean, we're talking 1 billion people. I mean, the United States only has 330 million, maybe 350 million people. China has about 1 billion point 5. So in other words, they have over maybe 1.2 billion more people than the US alone. And it's the same with, like in the UK or in Canada and Australia. I mean, so-called Western civilization and countries in Europe, individual countries in Europe, we none of the what was Western civilization, even comes close to the numbers, of people that China and India have, and the rest of Southeast Asia, because there's another 1 billion people down in all those various, kind of little island chain, areas down in Southeast Asia there as well. And we forget about the African continent, and South America. But underdeveloped nations are not paying attention to any of these, any of these Paris Accord climate things. And the people in charge of this World Economic Forum aren't pointing a finger at China, aren't pointing a finger at these other places. They're just going after Eastern or Western nations and saying, you've got to pay us X amount of money for this. It's like a tax. It's like everything else. We're cattle on a tax farm, or like I was saying before with this breakaway civilization, to get back into that, it's like on a consumer farm. And so there's this pressure by people are more or less from the education system that's indoctrinating them, these kids, instead of teaching them, common sense, like how to live your life and just, get a job, do something, have a skill. They're feeding them with this social justice nonsense, right? And people are going to college and getting a degree, and they're in ridiculous amount of debt. They have these student loan debts, and they graduated with something that's like is meaningless. They can't do anything. I mean, they can't even fix a squeaky door. They don't know what oil is, you know. Well, it's a fossil fuel, right? And of course, the military industrial complex is another interesting thing, you know, because is another that's another contradiction about the globe, you know, this whole idea of the World Economic Forum and the Great Reset. You have the neocons and the neoliberals, all right, which are one and the same. Though, you know, they, you know, one would be considered neoconservative, neoliberal, right? But it's all, you know, it's all basically they're warmongers. It's a military industrial complex that Eisenhower talked about in his farewell speech. And so what they're trying, what they don't realize is the amount of carbon-based fuels that it takes to run the military industrial complex. And that includes drones and bombs and weapons and ships. And yeah, they've got, you know, nuclear submarines and nuclear battleships that run on, you know, have nuclear power. But that's not the bulk of the military industrial complex. You know, it's basically still primarily run on carbon-based fuels. And again, 0.004% of CO2 in the atmosphere is something that green allows trees to grow green, allows crops to grow. They even use, you know, parts of it, of the carbon-based stuff helps with even fertilizers. It's used in the farming equipment that like harvest the crops. And then out of that, so we get our food, and then of course we get the oxygen. The byproduct is oxygen from the green trees and plants and everything else. So CO2, this minuscule amount of CO2, 0.004%, is basically what allows humans and animals to live, to breathe in the oxygen we need to breathe, and provides this 8 billion people on this planet with food to eat, because without it, and they're trying to tell us that we have to like, and at the same time, if there's a fire, the fire truck, the ambulance, emergency vehicles, you know, maintenance vehicles, storm knocks down, you know, some kind of power line, a tree hits a house. Well, what's going to raise that tree from the house? You don't, electric powered vehicles don't have that kind of, you know, the torque, the, you know, the surge of that's needed, you know, to pull a tree out. You know, they've got electric, I said this the other day, they have like, you could get an electric chainsaw, right? They're about so big, and it's nice if you have one around the house and you want to chop little things up and stuff. But when you've got a tree down, you know, on a house or just across a road, it's like, you know, so wide, you need carbon-based chainsaws. You need heavy equipment to lift that thing and move it out. The morning show. So yeah, people just don't think about it.
Good morning.
And it boggles the mind, you know. And people sit there and they watch TV and they hear these people talking, and these kids are like crying, you know, people, you know, that thinking, oh, you know, mommy, the world's going to end in 9 days. That girl in Congress said that we only have, or 9 years we have until, you know, the planet's going to be destroyed because people are driving these cars, right? And doing this stuff. And it's like, you know, that's the real child abuse, you know, just what they do to kids, teaching kids the wrong, you know, just lying to them. And the adults are no worse. I mean, anybody who's over the age of 21 who falls for that crap, I mean, to me, it's like, you know, what's going on in your head? If you're, you know, you're an adult now, you should be able to think for yourself. And when you hear someone saying this, I mean, we've all seen a fire truck and a hook and ladder, you know, and he's pump trucks put out fires, or these big giant ambulance that weigh multi-ton emergency vehicles. We've all seen cranes, we've all seen bulldozers. We've all seen, big trucks you know, hauling rock and everything else, cleanups. Everyone's seen that stuff, but why not? But they have to disconnect. Like, so they don't think. Well, they think, oh, well, Elon Musk, he'll make an electric bulldozer, he'll make an electric dump truck, or he'll make an electric crane. No, he won't. And besides, where's the charging station for that? Right? First of all, to run some kind of front end loader, some kind of super super construction or harvesting farming equipment, the amount of energy that's required for that a battery would be drained like that. And if you're doing this, if you're what about a bridge repair, out somewhere on a highway, right? Because of a storm, right? We're in tornado season now. I don't know if you've seen it in the US, in the Midwest US. I just want to follow up on Tony here in the chat. Henry Kissinger actually referred to us, all the people on the planet, as useless eaters. Okay? That's how the World Economic Forum views us. Useless eaters. Imagine that. Okay? And I always say, we're cattle on their tax farm or their consumer farm. And these guys, that's a literal quote. I'm not making that up. Useless eaters. That's Henry Kissinger for you. But back to this idea. In the US, Midwest US, there were just some really bad storms. I'm at what's called the mid-Atlantic states. I'm more on the eastern coast or side of, not on the, part of the US. But in the Midwest, it's tornado season and storm season. And they just had some devastating storms there. And the only way to clean up that, disaster is with heavy equipment, carbon-based fuel. All right. And once tornado season will continue now for a couple of months. And then before you know it, as you get closer to the fall, then you'll have hurricane season. And every year there's, consistently, there's always one or two that raise havoc and create unbelievable destruction. And the only way to clean up that mess and save lives is with carbon-based fuels, this heavy equipment. And then winter comes again, and we saw what happened in the US and Texas, but just storms in general, and power lines get iced down, trees, like I said before, knocked down over houses, all of this kind of stuff. And it's just one big cycle, it goes around. And, this is the cycle of life, the seasons, whatever. And at any given time, remember, because the hemispheres, the way the earth is, when it's summer here, it's winter here. So people in the southern hemisphere, will soon be entering into winter. And they're going to have their share of problems and storms. And they're going to need their carbon-based fuels and their heavy equipment to deal with any kind of tragedies like that. So it's mind-boggling that people buy this. That's the part I don't get. Have we really reached a point where that many people are functionally illiterate, that they don't have just like common sense, where they can put two and two together, or they think some kind of, magical, some magical technology. And even, say like I just say, I have a big announcement today. Here's what I created. I've created this new battery. It's only this size, and this will charge a fire truck. Okay. All you got to do is put this in your dashboard and connect it to your car battery, and it'll change whatever. Do you know how much farming equipment there is? Do you know how many emergency vehicles there are? Do you know how many cities, towns, boroughs, villages, right? All these remote areas. Just the sheer amount of equipment, heavy equipment all over the world. This is big world. It's a giant planet. It's another thing people don't realize when they talk about. It's like a guy like me who's like logged hundreds of thousands of air miles and traveled around the world. The one thing I used to always remark to people I was with, it was like it always like blew my mind. I would say, look at all the trees, look at all the green. Even just driving, I used to drive cross country a lot. Like I said, I don't do that anymore. I'm out of that scene. I just like I got my house. I bought my house like 5-6 years ago. I got my yard, my garden. I could walk to the grocery store, the pub, to the convenience store. I got a doctor's office next door. I got everything I need. I got rid of my car. If I need a car, I can get a ride. I could rent a car. I'm not going to keep buying new cars every 5 years, dealing with maintenance, car insurance, and all that stuff for something I'm lucky to use once or twice, where I live, once or twice a month. The only time I miss having a car is when I want to get some, big bags of soil or lumber or something to fix something or other, excuse me. I mean, it's not like you can, go drive and drink and drive, excuse me. So, yeah, breakaway civilization, it's just kind of dehumanization, enslavement of mankind. They're up to something, is what I say. I saw one guy was trying to explain that, there's some crazy stuff going on out in space right now because, we're in this weird time where there's some serious talk about the sun having a micronova sometime in the next 25 years. And and there's evidence of that in the archaeological record. When the whole Apollo mission, I talked about this before. Apollo was originally the name that they gave the sun god, small g. All right. And so why would we call a lunar mission, right? Name it after the sun god. Think about that. And there's a guy named Doug Vogt, VOGT. And he was one of the first guys I heard say that, talk about the Apollo mission. And we've sent these rovers, these Mars rovers, and we found these like glass beads, and they found this stuff in other parts of the country, in the US too, as if, something that the sun, there was this only could have been caused by some solar outburst that actually created this, turned this to glass, right? And I'm not a physicist. Okay. I mean, I'm an amateur, fan of physics and cosmology and things like that. But I listen to these guys, and I'm not talking about the woo-woo, characters who are out there just clickbaiting people to make money on their YouTube channels. Like I say, I'm demonetized. What you get from me is just, is the truth as I call it. And I advise you to go, investigate, on your own. But what happens is the sun every 12,000 years or so, in some instances, they have it down to 12,068 years. Okay. Goes loses its outer shell. All right. So it's like a micronova. The sun doesn't disappear or anything. The sun's still there, but it blasts, the solar system. And of course, we're close enough in. The Earth takes a pretty big hit. And that causes all kinds of problems, almost near extinction level event. But it depends on where you are, as the globe is spinning, when that thing hits. That's the big question. Now, this one guy, this vote guy, he seems that, and it's like mathematicians, these people that are, and I agree with, what's being said. I know about that. I'm just answering somebody in the chat. But what I'm saying is, these guys, the mathematicians, the physicists, the guys who mess around with chalkboards and whiteboards and just mess around with all kinds of equations here and there. I mean, you got to think about it. It's like, and these guys know what they're doing. I mean, how do they take, we've sent probes to asteroids, and they've actually made it to the asteroid and managed to land on an asteroid. And a lot of people don't understand that, how insane that is. Even the idea of these Mars rovers or anything like that. It's that, remember, the sun is hurling through space at a ridiculous speed, like, speeds that we can't even comprehend. And we're caught up. The sun is, like, in effect, dragging us along. It's like they kind of put these models together where, you see the sun here and it's, the planets, and they have them in schools, right? And by the way, Pluto's still a planet in my book, okay? But, people have this idea as if we're some stable, it's just this solar system and everything's just, various planets are revolving around the sun. It's not really the way it is. It's more like you have to imagine like this, the fist would be the sun, and the planets are, they're like in this kind of like orbital thing, but it's going like, right? At speeds incomprehensible, right? To us. That's how we're hurling, right, through the galaxies, and the galaxies are moving and hurling through the universe. So these guys who work, on launching a space probe, right? And then you've got these meteors or asteroids, and they're coming at speeds of like, right? And these guys mathematically calculate to shoot this thing up at a specific time. Because remember, Mars is moving, the Earth's moving, everything's moving like mad. It's like a shooting gallery out there. All right. I mean, it's amazing. And so these guys, they get that stuff figured out. That's the level of their brain. That's what they studied in school instead of like social justice, studies, right? These guys studied, advanced physics or mathematics or something like that. That's where their heads are at. More power to them, I don't have that kind of mind. But, I listen to them and I see the results that that they've done. So they end up precisely figuring out how to get a probe to land or scoop up something from, a meteor or asteroid or something, or get this rover to land on Mars. All right. Without just, destroy. I mean, we've had so many accidents, in the early days trying to do this that, but they've got it, they figured it out. So now we've reached a point where they have more successes than failures, but at one point it was, more failures than successes, particularly with Mars missions. So anyway, so these guys have got it figured out. And this one guy, he claims that where it's going to hit is going to be hit more or like on the on the eastern side of Africa, up, up towards Eastern Europe into Russia. All right. I mean, that swath of the earth is going to be exposed to the sun when the sun does this thing. All right. This micronova and whatever. And anyone in that area is going to be, that's pretty much going to be baked. Now, I don't know how the hell somebody could figure that out. All right. So, but, that's what they're saying. But anyway, this is one idea that's being pushed out there now. And there's a lot of serious papers, things being written about this. So there's a lot of, this is like the talk. And, people are worried about politicians and all this other nonsense. And it's like, we could be looking at a near extinction event in the next 25 years. But, whether or not that's a reality or not, who knows? And I'm not going to sit here and fearmonger, about it. And I'm not going to personally worry about it either. But there are an awful lot of things like that, that, we have bigger things to worry about. The Earth, one thing we know for sure is the Earth magnetic field has weakened. In fact, there's an anomaly down in the South Atlantic where there actually is no magnetic field. And the problem with that is that allows cosmic rays in. And cosmic rays, can wreak total havoc and definitely mess, if the more cosmic ray, those are the things that mess with your DNA and can just totally, you just don't want that to happen. The sun's magnetic field has weakened, and the sun's magnetic field overall also reaches out into the solar system and protects all of the planets, including the Earth, from cosmic rays. So you've got a weakened Earth magnetic field, and you've got a weakened solar magnetic field, right? And so the weakened Earth magnetic field is allowing more solar rays to reach us, but the weakened solar magnetic field is allowing more overall cosmic rays to come in. It's basically a recipe for disaster. At the same time, we're entering, the only thing that's like kind of beneficial or saving us is that the sun is entering this grand solar minimum, which means that there's not a lot of sunspots, there's not a lot of solar output. And because of that, that's helping. There's also seems to be more volcanism going on right now. You see volcanoes are going, and they're shooting ash into the sky. And that gets in the atmosphere, and that helps cool the planet as well, which is another thing that they just totally fail to mention, these people that are talking about the Green New Deal and that kind of stuff. They don't mention, how that whole thing. So these are some crazy times. And in the meanwhile, you've got them looking at us like we're just cattle and treating us like we're cattle on a tax farm or a consumer farm. And you've got people acting like lemmings who are just follow the leader, the Pied Piper. And this is adults. I said, it's one thing, it's terrible what they do with children in schools today, because, a child is, comes with an open mind. It's like a sponge, and, is listening to, to a teacher and expects to be taught, the truth or believe, this figure, this educator, they believe them. But, once you reach the age of reason, once you're a young adult, once you get over 21, you should have enough sense to basically start putting two and two together and saying, hey, something's wrong here, and, and I want to know. And in the age of information with the internet and everything else, you've got the ability to make your own decisions and to look. Look, I always say to people is, it's like when you get sick or you don't feel right or something, every people jump to like WebMD or one of these health lines, or there's a whole series of these. You do a search on the internet, you got a symptom, I got a pain in my back or something, or this, at the other. I don't feel, and they type it in, you go, and a couple of these health sites come up. And of course, basically you're dying, hypochondriac, those things. Hypochondriac looks at some of that stuff, and it's like everything causes cancer. But I always tell people, whether it's a health issue or it's something I'm talking about like this, it's like, don't go to one site, don't go to two sites, don't go to three sites, go to 7 sites, right? And then take all of that into consideration and see what seems to be the most repeated, statement made about what you're feeling or whatever. Or it's like with a health thing, like, sometimes I'll look up, and I do that, and I tell you, and it's helped me out. But I'm not, like I say, I'm not here to tell anybody what the way they should live their life. Do what you feel is right, and research everything on your own. But when I've felt bad or sick or something like that, I've always looked up, like, okay, what are the most antiviral foods, or what are the most certain foods, heart healthy foods, or foods that are things like natural antibiotic type of foods, so that because anything, anti-inflammatory foods, because basically any type of, and you could pretty much find this universal. Most diseases or most ailments are from inflammation. Whether it's your heart, people have arthritis, people have infections in them. I mean, that's all inflammation. But I'll always, so I've always searched, and I've been doing this for years now. And that's one of the reasons I grow food in my garden. And like I said, I'm going to be taking people out there when the weather changes. And I'll show you, what I do and what I grow and how I do it and how you can do it too. But I won't take, they'll say, garlic. I mean, garlic is pretty much universal. If you can handle garlic, garlic is like an antiviral, anti-inflammatory. Turmeric, but you have to have black pepper with turmeric. You get turmeric spice, and that stuff is almost tasteless, to tell you the truth. Like if you're making a salad or even a sandwich, you sprinkle some turmeric on there and a little pepper on top of that. That gets like lost in the sandwich. If you're putting mayo or oils or, some kind of salad dressing or whatever, you won't even know it's there. Things like honey, real honey, raw honey, is another antimicrobial, well, anyway, I always say, don't just go to one site and say, look for anti-inflammatory foods, or antiviral foods, or this foods, healthy this, healthy that. Go to 7 sites, and see what are the things that are in common, so you get a consensus. And because the internet's just so full of bull, and so many people that are just trying to make a buck and clickbait, like I say, one thing about you could count on here is I'm not monetized, and I have these things. I push these videos around, so to different sites, and I, so it's not just YouTube here. And I'm in the process of moving some of my videos to like 2 other video sites that I get more viewers on, on some of these other sites than you do on YouTube, because YouTube they mess with the numbers on YouTube, but that's a whole nother story. And I don't really want to get into it. I don't care. I like the ability that I could do this live here, and I could download this video once it's up, and then I could take that video and repost it somewhere else. I used to do produced videos, And if you go back about 3 weeks, you might see some of my videos and they'll have like an intro to them and there's images popped up on the screen instead of something like this. I can have a split screen and stuff like that. But they were taking too long to produce. Some of my videos were taking me almost 5 or 6 hours between the process of recording it, editing it, creating the MP4 file, then uploading the MP4 files. And if I were uploading it to multiple sites, it would be the whole day. And it's like, I'm not making any money. I tell people, buy my mug or something like that, which probably if you buy this mug, I'll be lucky if I make $1. I probably make 40 cents. It's the same with, the books and stuff. It's like, so I'm not in this for the money. I'm just into doing it. It's like, it's a way for me to work out my own ideas and to share the stuff I know. It's something I do in the mornings. It's like everybody's got to do something, that's the thing. People think about that. What's life all about? You got to do something. I don't know if I was talking about it and when I was talking about this last, but it was fairly recently when they studied all these centenarian people that lived to be 100 or over 100, that the common thing that they all had nothing to do with diet, exercise, their weight, or any of the things you'd expect, smoking, drinking, right? It had nothing to do with that. They found people over 100 were, eating chocolate, overweight. Some still smoked a cigarette here or there, drank some wine, ate chocolate every day, all kinds of weird stuff. They couldn't put anything together that like kind of matched with what, traditional medicine would tell you. But the one thing that they all had was that they were social beings and not social media, but they got together and they kind of had a reason to be. They all had a something to do, and it usually involved doing something together, with people, or they were gardening, or in other words, there was a reason they wanted to get up in the morning and do a thing, and that's what I'm doing with this. It's just it's a reason to be. I know this stuff. I'm going to share this stuff with you. And, in time, as these videos exist, they build audiences over time. And maybe somebody's going to, a light bulb's going to go off in somebody's head and it might help them in some way, shape, or form. And otherwise, it's like I say, it's even therapeutic for me because it helps me work out ideas and that's, and that's good too. So, yeah, so that, that's kind of the thing, it's like, it's repetitive, many times, but it's the same old story. We get into, but life isn't that complex, it's like, some people, they try to overcomplicate things. It's part of the game. I think that the so-called powers that be, the corporatocracy, play on us. They want to make it seem they want to be in control and have power over us. So they try to make it seem like they're necessary for our existence. It's like the media when you think about it. I had DirecTV. And I talk about this almost every episode. And I got rid of it last November, October. And I hadn't really been watching it much at all, which was the reason I got rid of it. And I don't miss it. I certainly don't miss the commercials. I couldn't stand regular TV because there's too many damn commercials. But, and the news, forget the news. The news was, like I say, it was just a bunch of news readers making politics as pop culture to sell used cars, basically, and pharmaceuticals. But, people are glued to the TV and they sit there and watch it all the time. And they make it seem as if it's a necessary thing. But when you get away from it, you don't miss it. It's like when I used to, like I said earlier, I used to smoke cigarettes. I used to smoke a pack or two a day sometimes I was drinking, I'd smoke like 2 packs of cigarettes. But I just quit. I quit smoking. I quit smoking a long time ago. And, and after, it wasn't long after that, I thought, man, I can't believe I wasted all that money on those things. Now I'll puff on a cigar or something if I'm drinking, but I'm not, that's about it. And it's the same with, so the idea is that, you got to break free of these habits, I guess. And without a doubt, television, news junkies, social media, these are all like habits. They're like addictions. And it's like, but I don't know, unless your brain is wired wrong, and I know there's people out there that have a physical disability, so that, the wiring of their brain is messed up. But I'm not talking about somebody who's, has mental illness. I'm talking about the average person, that there's no excuse, to be, to fall for these news readers and to be caught up in that and be addicted to this kind of stuff. Just live your life for yourself, be free, It's like, I don't believe anything. It's like I said about the FDA. It's like the Food and Drug Administration in the US. They constantly approve these foods and drugs. All right. And then those ads for those foods and drugs appear on television. And then a year or two later, there's ads by lawyers on the television telling you that if you took this drug or ate this food, you could sue the drug company or whatever for $1 million because it was, it caused cancer or it caused some kind of weird thing. And, that's, so they have the worst track record of anybody. And yet they're the ones respected. The Food and Drug Administration said this thing is safe for human consumption or for us to, take. I'm going to Food and Drug Administration. They're the last people in the world I would trust with anything. Anybody who has common sense, who's ever turned on a television, has seen that basically, most of the stuff they approve ends up causing cancer or something or worse, or death. I mean, that's a fact. That's not like that's one of those things that you can just do right now. If you turn on a television, flip around the station, pardon me, you're going to see an ad for some kind of pharmaceutical or some kind of thing. And if you flip around enough, you're going to see an ad for some saying, if you took this drug or this medication and you developed such and such, contact the law firm of such and such and such and such. Right. I mean, that's like, that's so easy that, you can't even question that, question that. But, you just gotta use your mind and common sense. And I'm afraid that they've got so many people under their control through either the education system, indoctrination, the propaganda and the media, to this, caught up in this cult of personality of politicians, and politics has become the new pop culture. I mean, pop culture should be like the latest fashion, right? Pop culture should be, whether or not people are wearing mini skirts this summer or something. I mean, that's pop culture, or the new pop song. Not like the fact that the last 20 years, every song has been written by the same 16 writers and producers, and they pretty much all sound the same, whether it's country, rap, dance, or alternative, right? They all have the same thing, I don't know. So just knowing that there's a breakaway civilization out there and trying to decouple yourself, like I say, limit your exposure, like they say in the financial industry. Not everybody could do what I did. I bought a cheap house. I paid $15,000 for this house, but it's a detached house. It's in it's a neighborhood. It's not like, it's not like I'm living out in the woods, and it's not like I'm living out of, in some really bad, place, you know. But and like I said, I could walk to a grocery store. I could grow food in my backyard, um, and I could walk places. My house is presentable. I got a leaky roof though. I'm dealing with that. But what do you expect for 15,000? My mortgage, taxes, and insurance are less than $200 a month. So I can't complain about that. So that's why I'm able to do this stuff, because my cost of living is so low that I barely have to do anything to survive. And the idea is that, I'm older now. I did all my traveling in my 20s and early 30s and stuff. I mean, I did all those things. So I'm not like, some people wait till they get older and then they want to, excuse me, they want to do everything, or they feel like they missed out on something. But I mean, I was in Australia when I was like in my early 20s. I was living in New York. I had summer jobs. I used to work in the Jersey Shore. Uh, you know, when I was like 18, 19, summertime. I was out in LA. I was in my 20s, and DC. Well, it was DC. I was in my 20s living in Capitol Hill. That's how I know all the DC insider stuff. And I was in LA by the time I was 30, living in Malibu and places like that. And I've been over in, I traveled over the pond. I've been in all around the UK. And so it's like, I did all that stuff. And excuse me, I don't have any regrets. So now I'm just like living life and living like at least exposed as possible to this, crazy insanity that's going on right now. But make no mistake about it, you've got to, there's this dehumanization going on. There's this process where they're trying to enslave people even more than they've enslaved them. And you've got to limit your exposure to them. You've got to, if your costs are high, there's a lot of people like going to be right now. I said this yesterday, I believe, people have just in the US, people have gotten like $1,400 put in their bank account this week. And people who are on unemployment are getting like almost full salary through September. And that can make you just sit back and say, hey, this is great, and just party time. And it's like, no, I would use this, these next 6 months or so to try to get yourself into a situation similar to mine, where you cut your expenses by like a quarter, I mean, pay 1/4 or less of what you were paying. My last apartment was over $800, and that was just the rent. I still had all these other expenses. Excuse me. I got to end this soon. My voice is going. But, once you get down to a point where your costs are that low, and if you have, all you need is a south facing lawn, and I'll go over that in other videos when the weather gets nicer, and you could start growing your own food. It's so easy, man. You just plant a seed. I mean, it's sick. It's sick. I mean, when I first did it, I didn't grow up in that. I mean, I grew up in a family. My father was like a printer guy. We were in the printing business. That was a family business. So I didn't know anything about growing anything. But once I did it and messed around with it, and suddenly realized all this stuff start popping up, and it was like every day, I had more lettuce, and herbs, tomatoes and peppers and broccoli and I even grew corn in my backyard, not many, but a couple stalks of corn, potatoes, carrots. I mean, like bushels of them. And these seeds are so tiny you can you wouldn't even be able to see it if I had one on my thumb right now. And you get all this like bounty. And so it's like, my goal is to grow most of my food. That's my big push this year, is to expand my garden and figure out a way to grow most of my food, to limit my exposure. So if there's crop shortages because of this grand solar minimum, or because whatever these crazy World Economic Forum Great Reset people do, messing around with fossil fuels, getting rid of this, getting rid of that, and then they can't, there won't be food shortages, crop shortages and stuff. I want to be able to remember the only thing you have to do, that's another thing about the simplicity of life. The only thing you really have to do is eat, right? You're a bioelectrical, machine, basically the human part, not your consciousness, soul, or whatever, that's a whole different story. But I mean, this unit, the only thing you have to do is basically consume food and water, and that sustains life. You need shelter, obviously, from this, from the weather. But yeah, I mean, that, a lot of people don't really think about that. And until there's, it's not even electricity, and I just ordered myself a little individual solar thing. In fact, it's supposed to be delivered today. I'll show that. Hopefully it comes today, and I'll show it on tomorrow's show. I'll demonstrate it. I mean, I've already demonstrated this other little thing, wherever the heck it is. Like these little handy devices that, can charge in an emergency, can charge your cell phone. You could see little bit of see those USB ports. And this thing you can crank. I show this all the time because, I mean, you could crank this thing like this to charge it. All right. You can pull this up and see if we can get that reflected the same way. See how it's up, this thing? That's a solar panel. If you open it up a little bit more, it's like a reading light. There's a ridiculous flashlight on it. And of course,
9 p.m. This low was 5 degrees above the normal low of 28. 1.15 inches of
Weather Channel or NOAA weather, So it's like, you get some tiny thing like that for like 30 some bucks. Or the thing I ordered for a couple $200, which is the thing you could actually plug in, a light or a computer or whatever into it, and charge your cell phones and run your laptop for hours. Pardon me. And things like that. So, between growing your own food, making sure you have an alternative electric, source. I collect rainwater off my garage roof, which is not everybody can do that if you live especially if you live in the city. But, I recommend people start, hoarding, water, and a thing to do is, it's not so much buying. It depends on what your water bill's like. But usually city water is cheaper than buying bottled water. And besides, if you could get these things that, those 5-gallon things that they put in water coolers, you turn them upside down, you put them in water coolers. If you can get a hold of some of those things, and just fill them with your tap water or your hose, and, that water's fine. And so if you're in a situation where there's some kind of grid down situation, remember, the water doesn't pump. Everything's electric now. And, and that's the other thing these people don't understand, who are pushing this Green New Deal, is that most electricity comes from some kind of carbon-based fuel. I mean, there's more and more natural gas and things of that nature too. But they're like stopping these pipelines, and all that kind of stuff. So, it's pretty. It's everyone's probably best to have some water, fresh water in their basement, and whether or not it's just to put in and to boil something, because you could always go out in your uh, porch or backyard and boil water over a grill. Like I always tell people, a lot of people think of a grill, a barbecue grill, backyard grill type of thing, or even one of those hibachi type of little things you can buy. But everybody thinks about making a burger, a hot dog, or a steak, right? But they never think about the fact that you could put a pot on there, or a cast iron pan, and you can cook on those things, right? Like just one of those things, dang, light goes off. So, you could pour some water in there and make yourself some soup or make yourself a stew, or you could, do whatever you want to. And, if the pumps are down, you could pour water in the top of your toilet and you'll be able to flush your toilet that way, you know. Or you could pour water directly into the toilet tank, not necessarily the tank up top, but even just in there, and that water pressure will cause that to flush down. They're common sense things, and it doesn't hurt to have a few of those things prepared, just in case. So anyway, this thing's running a little bit longer than I expected. I wasn't planning to talk more than an hour today. It's already like more than that. But it's just a ramble morning show. I appreciate you hanging in there with me. And for all you who watch this later on, not live, thanks for watching. And have a great day. And like I always say,
Good morning.
have a great morning, have a great day, and peace and all that good stuff. Take care. Talk to you soon. Cheers.